The sky bled red over New Mexico. So did the ground where Zara Dawson's home used to be. She clutched her mother's Bible, the leather warm against her cold skin. Dust and ash danced around her boots, a ghost of the life she'd known just yesterday. Her parents, her home, her faith, all gone, burned to cinders. It was 1875, and at 22 she was completely, terrifyingly alone. The wind whispered through the charred timbers, carrying a sermon of loss. She knelt by two crude crosses, her fingers trembling as she tried to find the words. Lord, hear my... The prayer caught in her throat, sharp and dry as barbed wire. Grief was a noose, and it was tightening. Most folks find it hard to talk to him when they need him most. The voice came from behind her, deep and steady. Zara spun around, the Bible slipping from her grasp. A man on a dappled gray horse was a silhouette against the dying sun. He dismounted, and the illusion broke. He was just a man, tall and broad, in a dust-covered coat and a weathered hat pulled low. But a star-shaped badge on his chest caught the last light of day. It glinted. Marshal Ethan Porter, he said, his voice softer now as he removed his hat. I heard about the fire. Came as soon as I could. His eyes, the color of a gathering storm, fixed on the fresh graves. A muscle in his jaw clenched. I'm truly sorry for your loss, Miss Dawson. Zara tried to pray again, to find some anchor in the storm, but the words were gone. The marshal knelt beside her in the dirt, and his calloused hands took hers. They were warm, solid. I'll answer beside you forever, he said quietly. Sometimes God needs human voices to do his talking. And together, they spoke the psalm. His steady baritone was a lifeline, pulling her own trembling voice from the depths. When they finished, a strange feeling settled in her. It wasn't peace. It was the first spark of a fire that hadn't been extinguished. It was rage. Marshal Porter helped her to her feet. The Rogers family has offered you a place in town, he said. They own the general store. Good people. Zara looked at the ruin of her home, then back at the lawman. What happens to this land? It's all I have left. It's yours by right, he assured her. No one's taking it from you. But his eyes told a different story. Something flickered in their stormy depths, a shadow he was trying to hide. She saw it. You're not telling me everything, she said, her voice finding a new, hard edge. Ethan Porter sighed, a sound of pure exhaustion. There are rumors, Miss Dawson. Rumors that the fire wasn't an accident. He put his hat back on, shading his face as if he couldn't bear the last rays of the sun. The Western Railway has been buying up land, aggressively. Some folks who refuse their offers, they've had misfortune. The world tilted on its axis. You think the railroad murdered my parents? I don't know yet, he said, his voice a low growl. But I'm going to find out. They rode toward the small town of Silver Creek as darkness swallowed the plains. Zara studied the marshal. He was a man carved from hardship, older than his years. He rode tall, but he carried a weight that had nothing to do with the gun on his hip. Your father, he said, breaking the silence, was a good man, believed in justice. That's why I won't rest. But there was something else in his voice, a personal fury. This wasn't just about his duty. It was something more. Silver Creek appeared like a handful of glowing embers in the vast darkness. Mrs. Rogers, a woman with kind eyes and a warm embrace, settled Zara into a small room above the general store. Left alone, the grief Zara had held at bay came crashing down. She wept until she had nothing left. A soft knock came at the door. It was the marshal, holding a tray with a bowl of steaming stew. Mrs. Rogers thought you might be hungry, he said. She took the tray, her hands shaking. Stay, she whispered. Please. He sat in the room's only chair as she ate. He told her about the deed to her land, held at the bank by a man named Winters. He told her he'd sent telegrams to the territorial judge. But Zara, he said, his voice dropping low, the railroad has powerful friends. Money talks. And out here, it often speaks with guns. Are you telling me to sell? She asked, the fire in her belly flaring up again. No, he said, his gaze intense. I'm telling you what we're up against. Your father valued truth above comfort.
I figured you were the same. She met his gaze, this stranger who seemed to see right through her. I am. A faint smile touched his lips. You should call me Ethan. Ethan, she said. The name felt right. Thank you. For everything. No one should face this alone, he said, rising to leave. But as he stood in the doorway, he paused.
My brother? He had a farm down near the Black Ridge, refused to sell to the railroad. Zara's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. There was a fire there, too, Ethan said, his voice thick with a grief that mirrored her own. They called it an accident. He didn't need to say anything more. She understood now. This wasn't just his job. This was revenge. The next morning, Zara walked into the Silver Creek Bank with a purpose. Mr. Winters, a man who seemed to be made of ink and paper, offered his condolences with a thin, rehearsed smile. I must inform you, he said, adjusting his spectacles, that the Western Railway's generous offer for your property still stands. My parents already gave them their answer, Zara said, her voice like ice. My answer is the same, no. Winters cleared his throat, a dry, rustling sound. Perhaps, in light of your changed circumstances, you might reconsider. A fresh start. Are you suggesting I profit from my parents' murder, Mr. Winters? The banker went pale. Certainly not. I merely... You merely what? Marshal Porter's voice filled the doorway. He leaned against the frame, his arms crossed, his presence sucking all the air out of the small office. Winters stammered, his composure shattering like cheap glass. I was just discussing Miss Dawson's options, Marshal. I'm sure you were, Ethan said, his voice dangerously calm. He stepped into the room. Come on, Zara, there's a message at the telegraph office. Outside, she took a deep breath. He's in their pocket, isn't he? Deeper than a badger in its burrow, Ethan confirmed. But don't worry, every snake has to come out of its hole eventually. The telegram offered little hope. The territorial judge would send an investigator, but not for 2 weeks. 2 weeks was a lifetime. They could all be buried in 2 weeks. We can't wait, Zara said. I want to help. I need to do something. Ethan studied her, a long, searching look. It could be dangerous. I'm already in danger, she shot back. At least this way, I'm fighting. He gave a slow nod of respect. All right, we start at your farm. We look for anything we missed. They rode out under the high sun. The sight of the burned homestead was a fresh wound, but this time, determination was the bandage that held her together. They sifted through the ashes, a grim archaeology of a murdered life. Ethan showed her what to look for, the small details that tell the biggest lies. An hour later, her fingers closed around something cool and hard in the ash of the kitchen. It was a metal flask, scorched but whole, and on the side, 2 initials were engraved. J.M. Ethan took it, his face grim. James Mercer, hired muscle for the railroad. A real piece of work. So he's the one, she breathed, her heart hammering. He's the one who held the torch, Ethan corrected. But someone else gave him the order. This is a start, but it's not enough. They searched until dusk, finding nothing else. As they rode back, a new thought began to form in Zara's mind, sharp and clear as a shard of glass. Mercer drinks at the saloon, right? Ethan was saying. I could lean on him, but it might spook his boss. We need to know who his boss is, Zara said, her mind racing ahead. The railroad has an office in town, a regional director, a Mr. Crawford. He's due next week, Ethan said. Then we need to be ready for him, Zara declared. The railway must keep records, contracts, something that connects Crawford to Mercer. Ethan looked at her, a warning in his eyes. Breaking into a railway office is a federal crime, Zara. Who said anything about breaking in? She replied, a plan blooming in the fertile ground of her anger. They have clerks, don't they? And those clerks have to buy tobacco and supplies. And right now, I happen to be helping out at the general store. A slow, reluctant smile spread across Ethan's face. Miss Dawson, you're full of surprises. My father taught me to stand up for what's right, she said. He never said I had to do it politely. His smile faded, replaced by that same intense personal fury. Good, because polite is about to get us all killed. Zara spent the next few days learning the rhythms of the Rogers General Store. She learned which ranchers bought which brand of coffee, which miners chewed which tobacco. And she learned all about Timothy Jenkins. He was a young clerk from the railway office, barely 20, with a nervous energy and eyes that darted around like frightened birds. He came in every afternoon for stationery. Zara made it her business to be there when he did. She offered him a warm smile. She asked about his day. She listened, really listened, as he talked about the pressures of his job. The boy was a dam of anxiety, and she was providing the first crack. "It must be such important work," she said one afternoon, her voice full of admiration. "Shaping the future of the territory." Timothy puffed out his chest. "Mr. Crawford, the director, he says I have the neatest hand in 5 counties. I handle all the land acquisitions." "All those contracts," Zara mused, her heart starting to beat a little faster. "It must be overwhelming." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Especially lately. Mr. Crawford is under a lot of pressure to secure the right of way. Some folks, they don't want to sell." Here it was. "That must make things difficult," she said, her voice carefully neutral. Timothy's eyes darted toward the door. "Between you and me," he whispered, "there's a special file. For the reluctant cases. Mr. Crawford calls it the persuasive negotiations ledger." Zara felt a jolt, like lightning striking nearby. "How fascinating. You must be very trustworthy to handle such sensitive material." The young clerk blushed. "He doesn't know I've seen it. I was working late one night. Found it by accident. It's got names in it, and dates and notes." Before she could ask more, the store bell jingled. Marshall Porter stepped inside. Timothy Jenkins froze, all the color draining from his face. He mumbled a goodbye, paid for his things, and practically fled the store. "You scared him off," Zara hissed at Ethan once they were alone. "Looked like he was getting a little too friendly," Ethan replied, a hard edge in his voice she hadn't heard before. "That was the point. He told me about a file, a ledger. He called it persuasive negotiations." Ethan's expression sharpened instantly. "All business." Did he now? That could be it. That could be everything. "I was just about to get him to tell me more when you came in here looking like the Grim Reaper." "And what were you going to do?" he challenged, crossing his arms. "Ask him to let you browse the railway's private files?" "Maybe I was," she shot back. "You'd be surprised what a man will do for a pretty smile, Marshall." Something flickered in his eyes. Anger, concern, she couldn't tell. "These aren't lovesick farm boys, Zara. These men are killers. They find out what you're up to. A pretty smile won't save you." His worry was a warm blanket on a cold night, but she shrugged it off. "We need that file, Ethan." "We'll get it," he promised, his voice low and intense. "But we'll do it my way. I have a plan, and it's a damn sight better than fluttering your eyelashes." The plan was simple and insane. On Saturday, when the railway office was down to a skeleton crew, Ethan would create a diversion out front, a loud public argument with the clerk on duty. In the confusion, Zara would slip in the back door. "You get 10 minutes," he told her as they stood in the alley behind the building, the shadows clinging to them. "If you don't find it, you get out. No matter what. You understand?" She nodded, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She watched him walk around to the front, and then she counted to 30. The back door was unlocked, just as they'd hoped. She slipped inside, her boots silent on the wooden floor. She could hear Ethan's voice booming from the front office, angry and official. He was giving the clerk hell about a stolen horse. The director's office was at the end of the hall. The name on the door read William Crawford. The handle was locked. Of course it was. Her father had taught her many things: how to read a ledger, how to mend a fence, and how to pick a simple lock with a hairpin. Her hands shook, but after a few agonizing seconds, she heard a soft click. The office was bigger than she expected, a testament to the railroad's arrogance. She went straight to the filing cabinet, drawer after drawer of boring official papers. Her 10 minutes were ticking away. Then she saw it. In the bottom drawer, tucked behind a stack of maps, was a thin leather portfolio. It wasn't labeled. It was meant to be overlooked. Her breath caught in her throat. She opened it. It was all there. A list of properties, a list of names. Her father's name was on the list, and next to it, a chilling notation in neat, precise handwriting: "Requires additional persuasion." Mercer and Associates authorized to proceed. The date was the day before the fire. This was it. The proof. The murder weapon, written in ink. She carefully took the page with her family's name, folded it, and tucked it into her dress. She was just sliding the portfolio back into place when she heard them. Footsteps, coming down the hall, and they were moving fast. There was nowhere to hide. No closet, no curtains, just the massive oak desk in the center of the room. With a strangled gasp, Zara dove under it, pulling her skirts in tight, praying to a god she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. The office door swung open. 2 sets of boots entered. One pair was Ethan's, worn and familiar. The other was polished, expensive. I assure you, Marshal, there's nothing irregular about our operations here, a smooth, cold voice said. Just doing my job, Mr. Crawford, Ethan replied. Crawford. He was back. He wasn't supposed to be in town for another week. Her blood turned to ice. Your concern for my private office is touching, Marshal, Crawford said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Report mentioned a suspicious character seen in this alley, Ethan bluffed. Just checking the windows. Zara held her breath as the polished boots circled the room. They paused right in front of the desk. She could have reached out and touched them. She could feel the man's presence, cold and dangerous, just inches away. Everything seems to be in order, Ethan finally said, his voice tight. I'm always happy to assist our local law enforcement, Crawford purred. Though I must say, your sudden interest in my affairs coincides remarkably with the Dawson girls' unfortunate situation. The silence was a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. The timing is a coincidence, Ethan said, but his voice was flat. A bad lie. Accidents happen, Marshal, Crawford chuckled, a sound with no humor in it. Lamps tip over, especially when stubborn farmers stand in the way of progress. Unless someone tips them over, Ethan shot back, his voice hardening. A serious accusation, Crawford mused. One that would require substantial evidence. Evidence I am confident you will never find. The threat was clear. Good day, Marshal. And a word of advice. The railroad always wins. Always. The door closed. Ethan was gone, but Crawford stayed. To Zara's horror, he walked to the desk, pulled out the chair, and sat down. His legs were inches from her face. She could smell his expensive cologne. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying not to breathe, not to exist. He shuffled papers, humming a tuneless, self-satisfied little song. Then he stood up. He walked directly to the filing cabinet. She heard the scrape of the drawer opening. The same drawer. There was a long, terrible silence. Interesting, Crawford murmured to himself. Then his voice boomed. Jenkins! The timid clerk scurried into the room. Yes, Mr. Crawford? Has anyone been in this office? Has anyone accessed these files? No, sir. Kept locked, just as you instructed. Then why? Crawford said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. Does this folder feel lighter than it did this morning? Zara's heart stopped. He knew. He knew. Jenkins stammered something she couldn't hear. Crawford was silent for another long moment. Perhaps, he said finally. Return to your duties. And Jenkins, not a word of my early return to anyone. Understood? Yes, sir. After the clerk fled, Crawford returned to his desk. He sat there for an eternity, a predator sensing a trap. Just when Zara thought she would break from the tension, another knock came at the door. Urgent telegram from Denver, sir. With a sigh of irritation, Crawford rose and left the office. The moment the door clicked shut, Zara scrambled out. She didn't dare use the hallway. She ran to the window, struggled with the latch, and finally forced it open. She squeezed through the small opening, dropping hard into the alley dirt. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs screamed, not stopping until she reached the shadow of the church at the edge of town. She leaned against the cool stone, gasping for air. That was too close, a voice said from the darkness. Ethan stepped out from behind the corner of the building. Crawford showing up early. I tried to get you out. I found it, she gasped, pulling the folded paper from her dress. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold it. It's all here. His authorization. My parents' names. Ethan took the paper, his face a grim mask in the moonlight. This is it, he said, his voice a low growl. Proof. Conspiracy. Murder. He looked at her, and in his eyes, she saw a terrifying mixture of admiration and fear. You could have been killed. But I wasn't, she said. Now what? Now, he said, folding the paper carefully. We have to disappear. Crawford knows the document is missing. He knows it was you. He will tear this town apart to find it. Before he could say more, the church door creaked open. Reverend Thomas stood there, a lantern held high. Marshall? Miss Dawson? He said, his face etched with concern. I heard running. Is everything all right? Ethan looked at the Reverend, then at Zara, then at the piece of paper in his hand. He made a decision. Reverend, he said, his voice heavy, we're going to need a sanctuary. Inside the quiet church with the scent of old wood and candle wax in the air, they told the Reverend everything. He was a man who had seen war, and the steel in his spine was evident as he listened, his face grim. You can stay in the old mission house out back, he offered without hesitation. Few people even know it exists. You'll be safe there. For now. But the document? Zara asked. Crawford's men will be everywhere. They'll be looking for us, and for this. He'll expect us to go to the territorial judge, Ethan said, a new plan already forming. But the judge is 2 weeks away, and he might be in Crawford's pocket too. We can't take that chance. His eyes met hers, and she saw the terrible resolve in them. The federal marshal in Santa Fe is a 3-day ride. He answers to no one but Washington. I can get the warrants from him. You're leaving? The words were out before she could stop them, laced with a panic she didn't want to admit. It's the only way, he said gently. Crawford will be watching the roads, but he'll be watching for both of us. He won't expect the evidence to leave town without you. I'll ride hard. You stay here, stay hidden, until I get back with help. She hated it, but he was right. That evening, as the last light bled from the sky, Ethan came to the small mission house. He carried his saddlebags, ready to ride. I made copies, he said, showing her several identical sheets of paper. Reverend Thomas has one hidden in the church Bible. I'm taking one with me, and you keep the original. Where? She asked, looking around the small, bare room. There was nowhere to hide anything. He reached up and pulled a small leather pouch from around his neck. From it, he took a silver locket, tarnished with age. He opened it. Instead of a portrait, there was a tiny, hidden compartment. My mother's, he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. She used it to hide emergency money during the war. Together, their fingers brushing in the dim lamplight, they folded the precious document into a tiny square until it fit inside the locket's secret heart. He closed it with a soft click and placed the chain around her neck. The metal was warm from his skin. I'll be back, he promised. As soon as I can. Be careful, she whispered. He gave her a ghost of a smile. I know a few trails the railroad doesn't. He turned to go, but she grabbed his arm, a sudden, desperate impulse. Ethan. She didn't know what to say. Thank you felt too small. Be safe felt useless. He turned back, his eyes searching hers. He didn't need the words. He gently touched her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Stay safe, Zara Dawson, he whispered. I'll come back for you. And then he was gone, swallowed by the night. The next 3 days were the longest of her life. She was a ghost in a forgotten room, her only contact with the world, the quiet visits from the Reverend. He told her Crawford's men were like angry hornets, questioning everyone, searching everywhere. But they hadn't come near the church. The grounds were considered sacred. Sanctuary. On the third night, a sound jolted her from a restless sleep. Shouting, running footsteps, lanterns bobbing in the darkness, surrounding the church. She crept to the window, her heart a cold stone in her chest. She saw Crawford's tall, unmistakable silhouette directing a dozen men. Search it all, he commanded, his voice carrying on the night air. The clerk finally talked. The marshal was spotted on the Santa Fe Trail, but he's turned back. He must have the document with him. Ethan, he was back. And they were waiting for him. She had to warn him. Slipping out the back of the mission house, she kept to the deepest shadows, trying to circle around the chaos at the front of the church. As she crept along the stone wall, a hand shot out of the darkness and clamped over her mouth. She fought, a wild animal in a trap, until a familiar voice hissed in her ear. It's me. Stay quiet. Ethan. He released her, and she sagged against him in the darkness. "You're back," she breathed. "Rode hard," he said, his voice ragged. "The federal marshal is a day behind me with a dozen deputies, but Crawford must have had lookouts posted. They saw me coming. They're searching the church. The clerk Jenkins he broke. They know you're here." "We have to move," he said, grabbing her hand. "They'll find this place next." They moved like specters through the town's back alleys, avoiding the patrols of angry men. Ethan led her to the livery stable. 2 horses were already saddled, waiting. "Where are we going?" she whispered as he helped her mount. "The last place they'll ever think to look," he said, swinging into his own saddle. "We're going home, to your land." They rode like the devil was on their heels, the moon a sliver of bone in the black sky. By dawn, they reached the crest of the hill overlooking the burned-out remains of her family's farm. It was a place of ghosts and ashes, but as they dismounted in a stand of cottonwoods by the creek, she felt a strange sense of peace. "Why here?" she asked. "Because I sent a telegram before I left Santa Fe," Ethan said. He led her to a hollow tree, and from inside, he pulled a small package wrapped in oilcloth. "Told them to meet me here." As if summoned, 4 men melted out of the dawn mist. They were hard-faced and carried rifles. Federal deputies. "Marshal Porter," the leader, a grizzled man with a thick mustache, nodded. "We got here last night. Marshal Will sent us ahead. Said it sounded urgent." "Good timing," Ethan said, relief washing over his tired features. "Crawford knows we have the evidence. He's tearing the town apart right now." The federal deputy smiled, a grim baring of teeth. "Then he's in for a surprise. The rest of our men are circling in from the south. They'll cut off anyone coming from town." Hope, bright and fierce, flared in Zara's chest. "So it's over? It's finally over." "Almost," Ethan said, but his eyes never stopped scanning the horizon. His vigilance paid off. The sound came a moment later, the distant thunder of hoofbeats, a lot of them, coming fast. The deputies took defensive positions. Ethan pulled Zara behind the thick trunk of a cottonwood. "6 riders!" one of the deputies called out. "Crawford," Ethan muttered. "He's faster than I thought." The riders crested the hill. It was Crawford, with James Mercer and 4 other thugs at his side. They pulled up short, seeing the armed men waiting for them. Shock, then fury, then cold calculation warred on Crawford's face. "Federal marshals!" he called out, his voice smooth as ever. "To what do we owe the honor?" "Investigation into the Western Railway's land acquisition practices," the lead deputy replied, his voice flat and official. "And their connection to arson and murder." Crawford actually laughed. "Preposterous. We are a legitimate business." "Then you won't mind riding with us to Santa Fe to clear this up?" For a tense second, it seemed like Crawford might surrender, that the fight was over before it began. But men like Crawford never surrender. With a speed that defied belief, he drew his pistol and fired. The lead deputy cried out, clutching his shoulder as he fell. The world exploded into gunfire. Ethan shoved Zara to the ground behind the tree, shielding her with his own body. "Stay down!" he yelled, drawing his own gun and returning fire. Bullets splintered the bark above her head. She watched in abject terror as the peaceful dawn turned into a slaughter. Mercer, the man who had burned her home, took aim at Ethan. Time seemed to slow down. Ethan was exposed, moving to help the wounded deputy. He was going to die. Zara didn't think. She grabbed the fallen deputy's heavy rifle, propped it on a root, and fired. She didn't aim at Mercer, just near him. The shot was wild, but it spooked his horse. The animal reared, throwing off his aim just as Ethan dove for cover. Seeing his advantage lost, Crawford did the unthinkable. He spurred his horse, not away from the fight, but directly toward her. He was on her before she could even scramble to her feet, leaning from the saddle and grabbing her arm in an iron grip. "The document, Miss Dawson!" he snarled, his face a mask of rage. He yanked her, pulling her off balance. "Give it to me, or I'll finish what I started right here." "Let her go, Crawford!" Ethan's voice cut through the gunfire. He was standing, his pistol aimed dead at Crawford's heart. "It's over!" "It's not over until I say it is!" Crawford screamed, using Zara as a shield. "Drop the gun, Marshal, or she dies!" The standoff was absolute. The world held its breath. Then Ethan did something strange. He smiled, a cold, chilling smile. "You think this is all the help I brought?" he called out. "You're surrounded. The rest of the marshals are closing in. The evidence is already on its way to a federal judge. Killing her won't save you." Crawford's eyes darted around, seeing the truth in Ethan's words. His men were down or pinned. He was alone. His empire was crumbling. "Then I have nothing to lose!" he shrieked, his madness taking over. He began to swing his pistol toward Zara's head. She didn't wait for Ethan to shoot. She didn't wait to be a victim. She drove her elbow hard into Crawford's ribs. He grunted in pain, his grip loosening for just a fraction of a second. It was all she needed. She tore her arm free, stumbling back as Ethan's gun roared. The bullet hit Crawford in the shoulder, spinning him out of the saddle. He landed in a heap in the dirt, his reign of terror finally at an end. In the quiet aftermath, as the remaining railway men surrendered and the wounded were tended to, Zara found herself sitting on the charred foundation of her old porch. It was really over. Ethan sat down beside her, his face bruised and streaked with gunpowder. "The legal fight will be long," he said, his voice weary. "But the war is won." She touched the locket at her throat. "What now?" He was silent for a long moment, watching the sun climb into a sky that was no longer red, but a brilliant, hopeful blue. "That depends on what you want," he said softly. "This land is yours. You could rebuild." The thought of rebuilding alone, which once would have felt like freedom, now felt empty. "You wouldn't have to do it alone," he said, as if reading her mind. His eyes, the color of a summer storm that had finally broken, met hers. "Unless you wanted to." Her heart gave a painful lurch. "What are you saying, Ethan?" "I'm saying," he began, taking her hand in his, "that when I rode to Santa Fe, I thought a lot about justice, but I also thought a lot about you. I'm saying that I would be honored to help you rebuild, not as a marshal, but as a man who has fallen in love with the bravest woman he has ever known." Tears welled in her eyes, but for the first time in a long time, they were not tears of sorrow. "The moment I saw you kneeling by those graves," he continued, his voice thick with emotion, trying to find the words to pray when your world had ended, I knew my purpose wasn't just to wear this badge. It was to find you." "I felt it too," she whispered. He squeezed her hand. "When I said I'd answer beside you forever, I meant it. For all the days to come. If you'll have me." Zara looked out at the broken, beautiful land, her land, and for the first time, she didn't see the ashes of the past. She saw the foundation of a future, a home, a life. She saw him. "I would like that very much," she said, her voice clear and strong. As the morning sun bathed the New Mexico landscape in golden light, they sat together on the ruins of the old world, their hands intertwined, ready to build a new one, side by side. The fight for justice is never easy, and sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones with the darkest secrets. If you were in Zara's shoes, would you have been brave enough to see it through to the end? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of justice on the frontier, don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of the strange, dark, and mysterious.